Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to thank the audience who kind of braved the Delhi. All right. Am I audible? All right. So first of all, I would like to thank the audience who kind of braved the Delhi weather today and showed up here on time early. So that's like a big deal. And we must tell you that we'll make sure that this event is worth your time. Kunal and Rohit have not just been the poster boys of the Indian startup ecosystem, but over the years, they've grown to become the most prolific set of investors in the country. They started off by writing one-off checks across startups, but over the years institutionalized it in the form of Titan Capital. With around 280 startups, consisting of some 15 unicorns, and I don't know how many Soonicorns. I think the venture has had a life of its own. The recent feather on the cap is the IPO of Mamaearth. Yesterday, the issue got subscribed almost 8 times. The listing is to happen shortly. So I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Kunal and thank Rohit for taking the time out for the session today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
It's our pleasure to be here.
So Kunal, just to begin with you first, it may seem that you're in a very comfortable spot, writing million-dollar checks, but before being an investor, you were an entrepreneur. And your journey also had lots of ups and downs, much like any other entrepreneur in the country. We would like to understand from you, does being an entrepreneur in the past gives you an edge as an investor? Would you think that it puts you in a much better position wherein you can empathize with an entrepreneur when he approaches you, he or she, or when they kind of get stuck somewhere? Would you have an advantage to kind of help them navigate through their issues?
Firstly, I want to reiterate the appreciation for the audience here. Braving this wonderful weather outside and making it here is an accomplishment. So I think a round of applause to all of you for coming. So, I don't think, Priyanka, we have ever been in a position where we're looking for an edge. We've just wanted to help founders. That was our only motivation. When we started, I remember we would go, there was nothing known as a startup 16 years ago. It was either a job or a business. This startup came into parlance in India only 7-8 years ago, after Startup India, etc. And in our early days, I remember we went to some person who was introduced to us, whose son had just returned from the US and wanted to invest in young people and their new ventures. And 2 hours in, Rohit and I are just pitching, just going for it, right? Like just completing our sentences, and now we complete our thoughts in our respective heads. Earlier we used to complete our sentences. And at the end of the meeting, the person was like just happy. They felt, and we were feeling that, yahan se to aayenge paise. And he went out, spoke with his dad, came back. He said, guys, I love you. You guys are great. I will invest 50 lakhs for 60% of the company.
Okay.
So I think it was that moment that maybe it has stuck with us and vividly stuck with us, that we felt that if we ever have the resources, experience to support the next generation of founders in a more fair manner, we must do it. So I don't think we've ever thought of it as, hey, we have some skills now, some experiences, some network, basis which we can be better than other investors. I don't think we've tried to better anyone in the market or compete with anyone. We've just tried to help founders to the best of our abilities.
Right. Rohit, your thoughts on that?
No, look, I think as Kunal said, when we started, entrepreneurship used to be like the really last option. Most people, at least I remember when I was starting up, I went to IIT. Most people thought कि इसकी job नहीं लगी होगी, so he's starting his own business. So I think that's how people used to look upon entrepreneurship back then. And both of us, myself and Kunal, have been extremely, extremely passionate about entrepreneurship from the very beginning. So the moment we could, both of us felt that we would like to contribute as much as possible to create many more entrepreneurs in the country. And that's the single biggest objective with which we started investing. Look, honestly, the amount of money we used to invest for the longest period of time was also so small that it didn't necessarily change the fate of the company. But I think over the years, we've been investing now for over a decade. One of the interesting things we've seen with founders is they don't think of us as investors. They think of us as entrepreneur friends. So they're more than happy to talk to us about anything that is going on in the business. Many things that they probably don't feel comfortable talking to many other investors about, because there's always this, as an entrepreneur, you're always under this constant pressure of putting up a brave face, regardless of how the business is doing.
Right.
And, sometimes they feel that their investors may not be able to palate bad news. But look, like all of us know, having gone through the journey ourselves, entrepreneurship is a journey of perpetual ups and downs. It seems linear out from the outside, but from the inside, there's always something or the other going on. And there are, in the most successful of companies, moments when things go wrong, things go bad, and the entrepreneurs generally really want to speak to someone to figure out what they should do. That's when they would call us, because they're willing to have the conversation with us because they know we will understand, having gone through all of it ourselves.
Right. And that's very interesting. Just to add to that, Rohit, would want to understand from you, at what point would you actually ask an entrepreneur to give it up? I mean, as entrepreneurs, I would assume that you're kind of manufactured not to accept that this can't be done. So how do you deal with situations like these, and what is your go-to suggestions for difficult situations?
Look, I mean, knowing the both of us, I think giving up is generally not existent in our dictionary. So I don't think I've ever told an entrepreneur to give it up. I think the suggestions are a lot more about a particular situation in mind, because, if you are in a certain situation, you're trying to solve a certain problem, you've been trying to do it for a long period of time. Many times you get stuck in the rut that you're trying the same thing many times over and not being able to make progress.
Right.
Sometimes just entrepreneurs need to listen from someone else that, well, taking the same approach for the 20th time is not going to solve the problem. We need to probably take a different approach to solving the same thing. But just, I think we also have that manufacturing defect, unfortunately, where we don't know how to give up, and neither do we know how to recommend how to give up.
Right, that's very interesting. And what's remarkable more than anything else, that the fact that the two of you, Rohit and Kunal, you've stuck together through the thick and thins of life, venture, Snapdeal, and now you are together at Titan. So, what's the secret sauce? And why I'm asking this is because this is happening at a time when we've seen differences between founders being so common in the Indian startup ecosystem. I mean, we've seen companies collapse, founders exit, and that's quite acceptable, just to say. So what is it that makes the two of you kind of stay together for this long?
सबसे पहले नज़र नहीं लगानी चाहिए.
Touch wood for that, yeah.
But I don't know. I think some things are just, God's will. I think it's very hard to, for all the reasons you mentioned, it's very hard to logically explain some things.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. Something that people probably don't know about us. I obviously grew up in Delhi, went to school, DPS, literally 5 minutes from here. Rohit grew up in Punjab, came to DPS in 11. And he was in boarding, and I was a day scholar. And the boarding gang hangs out with themselves, the 7-8 of them on a class of 50. And we were sitting on day one of class 11, diametrically opposite corners of the class.
Okay.
Diametrically opposite, right?
And by the way, that the fact that we were in the same class was also a big serendipity because DPS has 23 sections.
Yeah, right. So, and we're diametrically opposite on day one. Day 15 of the session starting, the class starting, we were sitting next to each other.
Okay.
There was almost no reason for us to, we didn't have a common background, we didn't have, nothing in common actually, at least before we met. Then we realized we had a few things in common. But, and I think that it's just, and to present day, we sit next to each other, right? We have lunch every day with each other. We talk many times a day. I don't know, I think it's hard to explain some things, but if I had to explain it, I think there is just tremendous amount of innate and active mutual respect, admiration, trust. That's probably the only way to describe it, but I feel it's deeper than that and probably can't be expressed in words.
I think most people make fun of us that outside of our houses and spouses, we do everything together. No, but I think, as Kunal mentioned, there's a lot of serendipity involved. The serendipity goes even further because Kunal went to the US to study post that, and I happened to go to IIT Delhi. It was again a big serendipity that we were able to keep in touch because he would come back for his vacations and I would still be in Delhi, and we used to regularly interact because this was the day before mobile phones and emails, etc., etc. So I think that helped us keep in touch through the years.
Right.
But I think to present day, one of the facets which definitely keeps us going is at some level, not explicitly but implicitly, both of us have accepted the fact that there are no personal victories in anything. Every victory or every failure is a joint one. And as a result, we don't think of, doing one better, etc. Whatever we think, we will either win together or fail together. And I think that just having that sense of, jointness in whatever we do sort of goes a long way in making a relationship last a long period of time.
I must say that's $1 million word of wisdom. And having said that, I would be very curious to kind of ask the two of you, given that you have such a good bonding, what is it that, when is it that you actually decide that this is a startup wherein we have to put the money? And I'm sure, given the operator mindset that both of you have, there must be differences and there must be back and forth calculations that, hey, you would say something, Rohit would disagree, and vice versa. So my question is, at what point do you decide that this is the startup you'd want to invest in? Is it more of an intuitive decision or a decision which is more analysis driven? And if, anybody from our audience today were to approach the two of you, what is it that they did need to have?
Okay, so the answer will be the same. Look, first and foremost, the stage at which we invest, which is typically the first money into the company, which most people would call the riskiest stage to invest, there's often not much data available. So you really can't do that much analysis. It's largely, most significantly the team, the quality of the team, most significantly, because that's the only thing that you can really wrap your head and hand around at that stage. Secondly would be probably just the size of the opportunity. Everyone goes after large TAMs, we go after small TAMs, right? Like we want to look for companies that are focused on like what we call laughably small TAMs. Because at that early stage, the only thing they can really dominate is a laughably small TAM. With the limited resources they have. And third is, from our own learnings of running a incredibly hard business in an incredibly competitive industry, the importance of setting the unit economics trajectory right from day one. And it can be done. I think there's a lot of times founders will say, oh, I'll figure it out when I'm scaling up. But it almost never works out. You have to set the trajectory right from day one. But look, there is a significant amount of intuition. We have an incredible team at Titan Capital. They are also very rigorous in doing reference checks about founders in terms of understanding a market, because we have to make quick decisions often about industries we know nothing about, because many of them are category creating businesses. So the category just doesn't exist. So I don't think there is any recipe or formula And honestly, we don't need one. We are investing our capital. We can invest in seemingly inane things and be totally okay with it. We don't have to explain it to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen, one of the reasons why we consciously focus on companies having a small TAM is because we have an innate belief, which we've seen over the years as well, is that it is a lot more important to build domination and love for the business in a very small sliver of TAM. And then that love can be expanded to sort of multiple other areas of business versus going after a seemingly very large TAM, but not being able to create something that people absolutely love. So that's to us very important. Whatever business we invest in, whatever they are doing or planning to do, customers should really love what they're doing. Even if the customer base is really small, as long as they're able to develop that love and build that brand around customer love, we feel they'll be able to multiply it over a period of time
They'll
to
be able
larger
to
and
take it
larger and
forward.
larger. I mean, just take the case of Mamaearth, for example.
Right.
When we invested in the company, it was a mosquito repellent for kids company. Talk about smaller TAMs than that. That just a company which is selling mosquito repellents only for kids.
Right.
But what they had, the customers absolutely loved. And over a period of time, they've been able to grow their TAM to a much wider base to the business it is today.
Right. Tell us more about Mamaearth, Kunal. I mean, the company has been going through its IPO, and it's a incredible journey because you guys had put in the check when perhaps none of us even knew about the name of the company, and that has had its own journey. So, how did you find them? What's the story like?
It's actually a funny, most people would think that we got an email with a presentation about a kids personal care company. None of that happened. In this case, I remember I walked into my kids' shower and I saw this green and white bottle sitting there, and I asked my wife, "Oh, what is this?" Because I would think that she's obviously very conscious about what we use with our kids, and she would have thought through. So she said, I was looking for an organic. She used the word generically organic, which is
India
good for you.
didn't have toxin-free products till
Correct.
then.
So
Yeah.
she said, I posted on a mom's group on Facebook, this is now 2017, about what is a toxin-free, kids shampoo or product. And she said within about 2 hours, 20 women replied, 20 mothers replied, 18 of them recommended Mamaearth.
Okay.
I was like, इनसे तो बात करनी पड़ेगी. And so turned the bottle. There was a phone number. Our colleague Bipin, he called up Varun. He called up the number. Varun picked up the phone, and they used to work out of one of their agency's office. I think a day or so after that, we met Varun, and I think literally we out of the meeting we were like, this we have to, we have to. I mean, just the sparkle in his eyes, and now obviously everyone will say, "हाँ, अब तो आप बोलोगे ही."
Right.
But it was special.
Yeah.
It was special, and obviously, this is a long story, and everyone is, judging this story by the chapter they are walking in on,
Correct.
chapter of their story, right? Like obviously, there's a lot being written about them across the spectrum, but this story started a while back, and I would say that what they've built is so incredibly inspiring for this entire ecosystem. They didn't come from some, IIT gang. They didn't come from some IIM, ISB gang or startup group, etc. They weren't senior leaders or CXOs at any large company or large startup. They were a couple. They've had 2 kids while building this company.
Right.
Most people don't realize how hard that can be with both of them working in the company. And they are not, they built a business where there are companies who have profits equal to their market cap.
Right.
And yet they built such a large company in a span of 6-7 years, which is also profitable and which is loved by their consumers. What they built is absolutely incredible. I would say this irrespective of whether we were investors or not, because it is going to inspire a generation of founders to say, if they can do it, I can also do it.
Right. And let's also talk about the kind of exits both of you are going to reap from this IPO. Feel free not to comment, but reports suggest that it's going to be 100x return on your investment, which happened to be, I think, 38 lakhs around that time. So would you like to throw some light on that?
I mean, look, I think that's whatever has been written about, it's already written about, you know, I mean,
You know, we prefer keeping a, well, we don't do it because we want to make 100 X's, right?
Of course.
But you know, also someone once said the higher the monkey climbs the pole, the more you can see its ass. So we don't want, like, I think it's fine, it's been a good outcome, we move on, right? Like the future doesn't care about the past, right?
Right.
What has happened, and we are only as good as the last investment we've made.
Right.
We can make a bunch of really bad investments and people will forget that we had invested in a Mamaearth or an urban company or an Ola.
Correct.
I think one of the things that we've done now, we've been investing for over a decade. This is not the first time we are exiting. We've exited in the past as well. One of the things we've done since the day we started the fund is whatever we exit, we all deploy almost everything back
Into the other
more and
startups,
more
right.
companies because, you know, I mean, both of us maintain a fairly frugal lifestyle and we don't really
I'll come to that, yes.
don't really like to spend that much, you know, but just, I mean, that's not what gives us happiness. And we are we would much rather spend all our time and energy in pursuing what we are really passionate about, which is promoting entrepreneurship in the country.
Right. Which is a very interesting aspect, both of you, because, you know, Kunal, you live in a rented apartment. Both of you drive Kia Carnival and not the Ferraris or the Maybachs of the world, which most of your peers in Delhi-NCR do, forget about Bangalore. What is it that you actually kind of, I'm sure it's a conscious decision and I really, really appreciate that. But as a person, I'm curious to know, you've done so good for yourself. What stops you from actually splurging a little and having such a modest, if I could say, lifestyle?
Look, firstly, I don't think there is anything wrong in buying a Ferrari if someone has to buy it, because otherwise all these companies will go out of business. Look, these are personal choices. At least we all have our personal philosophies. And when it comes to this, I feel there is no right or wrong answer. You have to do what makes you happy. I don't like spending money on things I have to worry about. So I feel that if you buy an expensive car in Delhi, it will get scratched within the first 7 days of you buying it, and then I'll be worrying about it. So on this, my philosophy is very simple. Just, I don't want to spend, so it takes my mind share away. I want my mind to be absolutely clean. That's the only reason. And yeah, we don't own one right now. If we buy one in the future, it's fine. Like there's no big deal. I feel you should do whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
Keeping a simple, low maintenance lifestyle makes me happy, keeps Rohit happy. I think that's what we will do.
I think same with me as well. You know, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I don't think I'm particularly proud of. First of all, by the way, Kia Carnival is, at least in my view, the most comfortable car. I really enjoy.
We were not
that.
paid. We're not sponsors or investors. in
Not a
this.
sponsored
This is free
promotion,
advertising
okay.
for them. But that said, you know, at least I've also realized that the most important thing is what makes you happy. If buying a fancy
Right.
car makes someone happy, they should absolutely do it because it's well-earned money and they absolutely deserve to spend and sort of feel happy for themselves. We don't necessarily do it because we want to maintain a low profile. Just that's who we are.
That's how it is.
At least I remember in my case, I experimented also a little bit. I remember a few years back, I bought a 10,000 rupee pair of jeans, and it didn't give me any happiness. Then I went back to buying my 2,000 rupee pair of jeans after that, because I realized I need to do what I need to do to feel happy rather than to show to someone that I have money. That doesn't matter.
Right. I'm assuming we have a couple of minutes left, so I'll just come down to my last question, and also one of the most important questions. The fact that the term, quote unquote, getting to profitability is in vogue these days, much like how startups used to flaunt the growth trajectory some 10 years ago. If I were to reach out to any e-commerce CEO, maybe say like in 2012, 13, 14, somebody would have looked down upon me for asking or questioning about profitability, but because then I would be questioning or pointing fingers on their growth trajectory. But suddenly the equation has changed. Everyone invariably is talking about getting to profitability, if not unit economic. So what are your thoughts about that? And when a startup approaches you, what is your first line of thought or vision that when is it that you're going to turn profitable?
So I think maybe I have a slightly different view, Priyanka. I actually feel that at least I have never met a founder who said, I don't want to be profitable. I think they've all wanted to be profitable. It's just that the timeline kept on getting pushed out because of availability of capital, their ambition, sometimes lack of discipline also. But no one has ever, I have never met a founder who has said, I never want to be profitable. They always wanted to be profitable. The timeline was a moving target. I do feel though that till FY22 a little bit of overspending was going on. FY23 was the year where a lot of corrections have happened. FY24 results, when they come out about a year from now, you'll start seeing probably the healthiest financials in our ecosystem. We already see that. Right? We get monthly MISs of so many companies. The transformation in the quality of financials that we are seeing this year is incredible. The number of companies that will become cash-generating machines in our industry is going to surprise us and is going to wow us. And within a year or two, nobody's going to be asking this question anymore. That I can assure you that will happen.
All right, we'll see. Rohit?
No, I mean, look, as you rightly said, also profitability is a very talked about thing these
Correct.
days. We've been broken records on this topic for the last many years. You know, even when it was not in vogue, most people used to make fun of us. No, you guys are too conservative. Why do you care so much about unit economics, etc.? But having seen so many businesses over the years, as well as having been a part of so many journeys, we've seen that especially getting the unit economics of a business right from very early on becomes extremely, extremely important, because changing the unit economics dramatically at a much later stage in the business many times requires you to change the business in itself, in which case you actually don't know whether the business will survive or not survive.
Right.
And as a result of all of these learnings, you know, and that's one of the big factors that we use to assess companies when we invest in them, is that does the business have a strong potential to generate good economics or not? Because look, at the end of the day, it's very simple maths. All businesses eventually exist to generate a profit. There can be no business which can exist for perpetuity without generating a profit. The earlier in the journey of a business, one is able to figure out how that will happen and sets in place some guardrails in terms of economics, how much to spend, etc., the better off a business is and the smoother a business's trajectory can be.
All right, so there's certainly sanity prevailing in the market as we speak, and it's the best time to be an entrepreneur as well as for the investors, because then the money is not just merely utilized for cash burn. The cash is not just being burned for marketing purposes or advertising or just for consumer acquisition, but also to kind of plow it into earning the meaty revenue and extracting profits out of it. On that note, I would really like to thank Kunal and Rohit. Thank you so much for taking time out. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Priyanka.
you.
A big
Thanks,
round of
Priyanka.
applause for
Thank
them,
you.
please.